I was looking at lamps yesterday. In John Lewis, I'm looking to buy a lamp for the old thing, the old desk in my my office. And there was one of those lamps that you tap it, you just touch it, and it comes on. And you touch it and it goes off. And there was another lamp that you touch it and it goes on. You touch it again and it goes brighter. And you touch it again and it goes brighter again. Yep. Touch it and it goes off. And Nicola touched it a few times and went on, off, on. And she said, oh. Also, she said, she looked at the details about it. She said, oh, it said it's dimmable as well. And she said, how's it dimmable? And she was looking for a way of dimming it. I was like, you've just tapped it so many times. That's dimming it. She said, no, that's just off and on. I said, it's not off and on because it's off and then it's on and then on a bit more and then on a lot. And that is very just dimmable. Yeah, sequentially dimmable.
Well, I guess it's not dimmable. It's the opposite of dimmable. It's uppable.
Undimmable.
You can't go down.
Oh, you can go you back off. Yeah, you go back off the other side.
So you're not going from bright down.
All lights go dramatically down. So you think it's an undimmable one, but an
not undimmable. The opposite of dimmable.
Brightable.
Brightable.
It's a brightable lamp.
It's a brightable lamp.
It's just switch that lamp on. Yeah, could you brightable it up a little bit?
Yeah. Hit the brighter switch. Yeah, the brightable switch.
It is Thursday, the 29th of November, 2018, and you're listening to Skeptics with a K, the podcast for science, reason, and critical thinking. Skeptics with a K is a production of the Merseyside Skeptic Society, a non-profit organisation for the promotion of scientific skepticism on Merseyside, around the UK and internationally. I am your host, Mike Hall. With me today is Marsh.
Hello.
Alice.
Hello.
And special guest, it's Emma.
Hello.
Emma, possibly the most returning guest we've had on this show.
Am I?
Yeah, I think
is that true?
This is your third bash on the show now. You did the fourth bash on the show. Yeah,
the first one was
drunk.
The drunk show,
yeah.
But that counts.
You were on it.
You were on air.
I mean, it shouldn't.
No,
but it does.
For anything that.
No, I think it's
that
third.
vision.
Actually, I'm making up an appearance.
And Laurie's done two.
The secret lost episode.
Oh no, I was on the David Icke one.
You were on the David Icke show as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
I forgot we even did that one.
We've done a lot of stuff. This has been going a while.
I know.
Like 9 years in by this point.
10 years next year, Jesus.
10 years next year.
10 years next year.
Yeah.
Oh, come back to that.
Or not.
In jokes. So, Katie's been away. Katie's been in Texas.
She was in there for Thanksgiving, didn't she?
Yeah, she went over there for Thanksgiving. She's literally only just got back. And it was also then my 7th wedding anniversary the day she got back. So we went out. We went and had a nice meal.
Did she remember any of your anniversary?
No, not at all.
Must have been horrifically jet-lagged.
She was jet-lagged. She was asleep for a good chunk of it. And the rest of it, she was in heels. So none of that is conducive to, going, oh, isn't this a wonderful day? So we went to Roski on Rodney Street.
I've heard good things about it.
I've heard very good things about this restaurant in Liverpool.
It's run by a MasterChef winner. So it's a guy who won MasterChef The Professionals a few years ago.
It used to be a restaurant called Pushka.
Yes, it did,
which I found incredibly pretentious.
It was nice.
And we went for dinner once and spent the entire time saying how pretentious this place was. It's the kind of place where the waiter sits down next to you to take your order, which drives me crazy because it's you're just trying to be friendly.
It's a bit too matey, that, isn't it?
I'd want to put their eyes out, I think.
Yeah, they're the serving staff.
But then in the bathroom, on the back of the toilet wall, above the toilet, there was review from The Guardian saying that it was the most unpretentious posh restaurant they'd ever eaten, and I was like,
okay,
really pretentious.
Well, it was quite posh. It was quite friendly.
Roski's it's a totally different thing, but Roski's also posh, similar sort of thing.
It's run by a winner of MasterChef The Professionals. Yeah. I want to see MasterChef The Unprofessionals, and just like chefs who've got like really slapdash approaches to the kitchen,
throwing dough at the walls,
terrible hygiene, all that kind of stuff.
So I had the 11-course tasting menu. 11 courses. And of course, because it's 11 courses, they're all tiny courses.
Yeah, it's not 11 courses, is it?
They've got to be.
It's 11 mouthfuls.
They change your cutlery in between every one. So they take knife and fork away and bring new knife.
You don't need that.
No, that's not acceptable.
Which is what they do.
Not in 2018 when we're trying to be more economical about things.
I mean, the alternative, I suppose, would be to have...
away.
Well, no, but they still have to wash all of them in hot water.
I don't think they were washing them. I think this is unprofessionals. You were saying wiping it on a reusable cloth.
The alternative would, of course, be to have 11 knives and 11 forks just spread out either side of your table before you go
knife and fork. And it's fine.
Just keep reusing it.
You're not changing your teeth or your tongue in the meantime, so there's going to be some bleed over in terms of flavour.
Maybe switch them between particularly pungent courses.
Yeah, but it turns out that... so I just booked this because I knew it was a fancy restaurant. I've been there before. I'd really enjoyed it. Turns out that for some reason, like 5 of the 11 courses were fish.
Okay, that's fine.
Katie hates fish.
Oh, that's not good.
Katie despises fish.
Which, if it's 4 to 5 out of 11, is probably a good ratio for most people going to a fancy restaurant.
Yeah, that was a lot of fish courses. So there was like initially the first course was like cod, which was really nice and it didn't taste coddy.
And cod's quite a meaty fish.
Yeah,
it's
and
not like
it was okay.
Too fishy.
There was a course which was Southport shrimp. So it was like prawns, but they caught them in Southport.
You can do that, that's fine.
They'd just gone up and like trawled, so they were tiny. Little tiny...
I'm sure they do. This isn't that uncommon that you'd get...
Ironically, small prawns.
Right.
Little tiny shrimp. And Katie actually quite likes shrimp. She likes prawns. So she's like, okay, I can look forward to that one because that one's okay. I get that. And they turned up and they served them on a bed of lemon sole. I said,
that sounds delicious.
And I was really loving it. I was loving it. It was brilliant. They had Norwegian lobster, which was a bit slimy. I wasn't so sure about that one. They had crab, which was great. It tasted the crab.
Crab isn't fish.
Yeah.
It comes out the sea. It isn't fish.
It's just a big insect, really, isn't it? Just a massive insect.
It's a spider.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Oh, well, arachnid then, yeah.
I got Katie a nice anniversary gift, and Katie brought a gift back for me from Texas. So what she brought me back was this, which is it's Woo soap.
Money soap, jackpot money soap. So what actually is this?
It's magic soap, and if you use it,
smells nice.
You're going to come into money.
You're going to do what?
You're going to come into money.
Oh, you're going to get money.
You're going to come into money.
Okay, I see. I mean, it does have a very money-ish look about it. There's a jackpot on there. There's a rainbow coming out of the pot of gold.
It is like a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but the rainbow's going to be a very weird shape if that's the direction the rainbow's going in.
Yeah, it's bifurcated way too early there.
I strongly suspect as well, feeling the packet, that there is a dollar sign embossed.
I would imagine so, because it's got dollar signs all the way around the edge of every part of the packaging.
I think there is a dollar sign embossed on that bar, but there is it's enchanted soap that if you use it, you will get rich.
Who's enchanted it? Based on the design, it can only be a leprechaun.
It's not really got a leprechaunish...
It's got a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow.
But that's the only sign of leprechauns on there.
It's the only
sign on there, full stop, apart from $50 million signs.
There's loads of dollar signs, and it's written on Spanish on the back.
It was made in Peru.
Right.
Oh, it's one of those famous Peruvian
leprechauns is what it is.
I think we're just showing Alice's ignorance of Peruvian culture, where they also have pots of gold and rainbows, but it's brought them by a llama.
I actually know more about Peru than I do any other country. Now you're going to try and test me. I did actually have to study Peru for geography, and it's the only thing that stuck. It's the only capital city I know.
That's the only capital city
Pretty much,
you know.
apart from like the big ones.
Right.
I am not good with capital cities. I know the capital of Peru.
So if any of us get rich at any point over the next few years, it's the money soap.
Well, I've not used the money soap.
We've not washed our hands in it, though.
We've all touched it. It counts.
I've touched the package.
I touched the paper.
It can't count if it's touching the package, because how many people in Peru, when making it, then handle that package as part of the supply chain?
Do they all get... Why are they still making money soap?
That's true. Who made that?
What have you guys been doing?
We celebrated Thanksgiving dinner with, well, 3 of us did.
We did. We went to Sarah's. Also, like once of this show, we went to Sarah's for Thanksgiving dinner, which was cool.
She cooked us a delicious vegetarian, vegan.
Yes, I sat next to the wombat shit. That was good.
You did sit next.
There was wombat shit.
Yeah, of course there was wombat shit. It's Sarah's.
No, I know there's wombats, but I know she had
Somebody
wombat
gave her
feces.
a gift of wombat poo, because wombat poo is famously
it's cubular. Yeah, it's cubic.
Yeah.
And so she managed to get it from Australia to the UK.
Is that a good
customs.
Gift? Smuggling shit?
Well, she apparently she declared it at customs.
Right.
She just went up and said, "There's a box of wombat poo," and the guy was like, "Go on through."
I don't know what to do about
just
that.
had no idea how to address that at all.
How sharp a corn is... So you witnessed this wombat shit up
I did,
It was inside a plastic box. It was quite old. I think it had been there for quite a while.
Yeah. How sharp were the corners?
I wouldn't have described it as a cube from a distance.
No, I wouldn't either.
I think it's just a marketing thing. I don't know what they're marketing other than
I think Sarah's friend might have found the wombat poo and put it in a plastic container rather than she bought it. Nobody buys
No, you might not have bought it, but you might have been adjacent to a wombat.
Yeah.
And said, do you mind if I steal some of the wombat's poo? That's different to I just found some wombat. The zoo owner, the person at the animal reserve.
But either way, I'm sure the person who gave Sarah the wombat poo was sure it was wombat poo.
Yes, but what I mean is, if it's come very recently out of the wombat, it's less likely to have deformed. And I'm dubious as to how sharp a corner, how sharp an edge you get of that wombat poo, and how sharp it has to be before, how not sharp rather, how blunt and rounded edges it has to be before it stops qualifying as a cube and goes back into being spherical.
You want to get a physicist to stand next to a wombat and look at it and measure the angles.
I mean, it doesn't need to be a physicist to measure the angles of a wombat.
Somebody who knows,
that's below their pay grade, I would imagine.
It would need to be a mathematician. You're quite right.
It could be a mathematician, a geometrist. Someone with access to a set square that they're not worried about getting dirty.
So I've been watching a lot of YouTube recently. Aside from it being a useful educational resource for me professionally, with a lot of software conferences, they put their content online for free, which is really good. Yeah. Chrome Dev Summit was on recently, and I've watched a load of that content, which was great.
I get really annoyed by older people. Not all older people, but the group of older people who say, "Oh, kids today, they don't know how to do anything. They could never fix a car." And it's like, you don't need to. There's a YouTube video on everything.
On literally everything in the world.
I can learn how to do anything I need to do in the moment.
It's like a shit version of the Matrix, isn't it? It's like instead of having it downloaded into your mind in seconds, it's downloaded in your mind over the course of about 7 minutes.
Exactly. I managed to change the screen on my smartphone by watching a YouTube tutorial.
I also find YouTube quite a nice way to unwind, which is something I need to learn how to do better. Watching Adam Savage make a life-size Totoro costume in his workshop, for example, is actually great fun to watch. And he's so enthusiastic about it as well. He's always there bouncing around, as Adam Savage tends to do.
I like watching people icing cakes.
Icing cakes?
I don't know why, but every now and then they pop up in my YouTube feed and sit and watch them for ages.
Okay.
It's really therapeutic.
It's in just writing on them or art? Or
they'll do fancy art things with the spinning cake, whatever that's called, and then they'll do it sped up so that you can actually see the whole process.
All right,
the spinning cake thing, like one of those vase machines.
I don't know.
The Demi Moore vase machine thing.
A potter's wheel.
Potter's wheel, that's what it is, yeah. Vase machine,
Vase machine, potter's wheel.
I thought I was weird for not understanding what you meant.
The vase machine, that makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
How is it not?
They're nearly exactly the same thing except for the spelling.
Yeah, it's fine.
And all of the words.
A vase is made of glass.
Concept-wise. No,
not always,
all vases
but
made of glass.
My go-to vase is a glass vase. So why
pottery.
Would you?
You could do a glass vase on a potter's wheel. You just need
you need to be insane.
I think you've got to blow a glass vase, don't you? Are glass vases blown?
Yeah, I would imagine they are. Yeah. Or someone with really callousy hands.
They're not. It might be poured into a mould.
They could be moulded. They could be moulded.
They're not.
Sophia, how's it made on this?
Well, yeah, you can find out how to do this on YouTube.
Over
7 minutes. Yeah.
So I like watching Adam Savage build stuff. He's got a channel there called Tested where he builds stuff quite regularly. There's another channel called Numberphile that I like to watch. They've got a video where they justify the claim that the sum of all positive integers is minus 1/12. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 up to infinity equals minus 1/12. And they go through the proof of why that is. I don't buy it personally. I don't believe them for a second. But it's more entertaining than watching yet another rerun of The Simpsons on Sky One or something like that.
I don't know. There's a lot to be said for constantly rewatching the same thing over and over.
No, waste of time.
I mean,
absolute waste of time.
I've seen a lot of Doctor Who, Alice.
Ditto with Buffy.
But it was probably Numberphile that led YouTube to recommend my new favourite channel, which is a channel called Black Pen Red Pen.
Black Pen Red Pen.
Black Pen Red Pen features a very enthusiastic guy solving maths equations on a whiteboard.
I don't understand why you would want to watch maths. If you don't have to think about maths, why would you want to do maths?
What I love about it is he's so enthusiastic about maths.
That's great.
He fucking loves maths and he gets so excited about it. And enthusiasm is a characteristic I find really appealing in other people. When someone just really, really, really cares about something, in this case, maths, and wants to tell the world about this thing because they love it so much, I find that's so brilliant to watch. And he'll work through an equation on the board, and he goes through the techniques that he uses and points out pitfalls or little mnemonics to help with the solution or whatever. And often there's no reason for the maths he's doing at all. Like the video, a large proportion of his videos start with him going, right, let's do some maths for fun. We're going to solve this equation. And it's just an equation. He's just drawn. Let's do that. Right, let's try and integrate that. Why the
you
fuck
say
not?
he's just drawn it, but he's actually planned that out well ahead of time.
And one video, you can actually see him, he stops halfway through doing the solution and says, you might be wondering when you'd come across this problem in real life. And to that I say, you're coming across it now. And then carried on with the solution.
Okay.
But I've learned so much maths that I didn't understand properly from watching this guy about calculus or complex numbers or trigonometry. I did all this stuff at A-level and I did it at university, and it never stuck with me the way it has watching this guy, because he's very good at explaining stuff and he's so enthusiastic, and I really love it. It's really my new favourite channel on YouTube. But another channel which keeps coming up in my recommendations list is a channel called 5 Minute Crafts.
Right, is this like a bit Nazi-ish? Because all YouTube recommendations list over a period of time end up recommending Nazis.
Trends towards Nazi content.
Yeah, Nazis are flat Earth.
I don't know if anyone's seen. Has anyone
both.
seen 5 Minute Crafts?
No.
It's a very popular channel.
You must have seen, not that particular, you've seen plenty of crafts videos, Emma.
I do sort of cross-stitching and embroidery, so I watch a lot of those videos, but I don't watch wider crafting, like drawing and stuff like that.
It's drawing craft. That's art.
Is it?
Classically, art isn't craft. That's why they talk about
They call it
arts and
arts and
crafts.
crafts.
It's the other side of the ampersand. Across the divide.
Well, 5 Minute Crafts purports to be a DIY and crafts channel, which posts videos on so-called life hacks.
Is it all like hovercrafts? Or like vessels? It's just how to make ships in 5 minutes.
They notionally produce these things that
Or
quick.
flat cheese.
You could-
flat plastic cheese.
Oh, that kind of
That
craft.
kind of craft,
Okay.
yeah.
They notionally talk about things that you can quickly make out of simple household items to solve everyday problems or things that just make your life a little bit easier. That's kind of the raison d'etre of the channel. For example, just looking at the introduction video on their channel. So most YouTube channels have got on their home feed, it's got an intro video to this channel. They suggest putting clear nail polish on laddered tights to stop them from laddering further.
I've heard that so many times, and
Yeah.
I have tried it on occasion. It doesn't
Not work very well.
No.
But
Hang on,
that's
don't...
People suggest the hack that they've never tried. They've just heard it from somebody else, and then you get this Chinese whispers. I've heard this works, and it doesn't actually work.
I can't imagine that the clear nail varnish thing to stop a tight laddering would work, because tights need to be like stretchy generally, and nail varnish
When it sets,
isn't
it cracks.
set. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
It seems like a ludicrous suggestion.
But everybody suggests it.
I think somebody started that as a gag, knowing that nobody ever tries
would ever
out
test it.
any of those life hacks. Like, oh, you cut off the end of a carrier bag and use it to, stitch a shower together or something. No one ever does them. Like they're all implausible stuff that no one's ever done before.
Oh, we might come to carrier bags later. So they talk about putting double-sided tape on your shirt to stop it gaping around the boobs.
But
So if your shirt's kind of gaping around, just put a little bit of double-sided tape. Just put that down. There you go. It doesn't gape anymore.
But double-sided tape is really, really, really sticky and is going to get really, really stuck to your clothes. They also make fashion tape, which is double-sided tape for sticking clothes together. Why wouldn't you just buy that?
And
It's not going to ruin your clothes.
I buy shirts because I have a large chest. I buy shirts with extra buttons on them to stop that from
Right.
happening.
Yeah, these are better hacks.
Much better hacks.
Well, try this one. They talk about putting your straw through the ring pull of a can of pop to stop it floating to the surface.
It'll still float. Unless you get the angle right, it still floats.
You get the
No, I think that will work.
friction
You turn the ring
could-
pull around.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know how, in theory, it works. It depends on the size of your straw.
It does depend on the size of the straw.
Well,
that's
yeah,
true.
if you've got a really fat straw, then it's not going to go in the can in the first place.
If it's a really small straw, it's still going to get pushed up because it's getting pushed from the bottom and the hole is...
Yeah, but you can
You'd
put
have to
it through,
angle it right.
and then to grip it. Just turn the little ring pull around a little bit until it grips it.
It requires additional hacking.
It's the same hack. That's the only one that has a modicum. The rumour was, which is probably bullshit, is the reason the hole was in the ring pull in the first place was for that straw thing. That's got to be bullshit.
Yeah, of course it is. They also advocate rubbing candle wax on the zip on your coat to help it move if your zip gets stuck. So if you're struggling to zip your coat, just rub a bit of wax on a thing and it'll zip up much easier.
That sounds like bollocks.
That sounds like bollocks.
Then there are other things that they suggest. They suggest that apples should be torn in half rather than cut.
Right. One, I don't know what that means. I don't know how you tear an apple in half. Apples are quite tough to get into because you always get that kind of
maybe it's like a chocolate
initially.
Orange. You have to whack it first.
You could need to do the whack. The other thing is, and this came up the other day, I saw somebody doing that thing that people do with an apple where you like and then rub it on your claws.
Buffing an apple.
And I thought, what is the benefit of buffing an apple?
Don't know.
What is that for? Because you see people do it.
I've never seen. You told me about this the other day. I've never seen anybody.
You've seen someone buff an apple. What is the benefit in that? What does it do for you? What does it get you?
Makes a nice shiny apple.
And what's the point of a shiny apple?
Better than a matte apple, innit?
Maybe it's not. Maybe there is value to a matte apple.
Nobody wants a matte apple.
Why do you care how shiny it is to put it in your mouth?
I think it might be an old-fashioned thing of kind of a shiny apple is like a good apple, a healthy apple, and if you were poor, you'd have a horrible. So if you could make,
so you're saying poor people couldn't breathe on their apples?
I'm saying
they wouldn't have those glossy red
They all
apples.
had tuberculosis so bad they were like just couldn't get a breath out.
Struggling with
That's
consumption.
what it was. These poor urchins with consumption. Yeah.
But in this video, they get an apple.
Yeah.
And their videos are all kind of played back at slightly too fast, like a Benny Hill sketch. So it starts off with someone kind of cutting an apple with a knife, and then
before going into some violent misogyny like a Benny Hill sketch.
Then you get a big cross on the screen that goes like don't do this, and then instead it goes to somebody holding an apple. They take the stalk out, put their thumbs in the top of the apple where the stalk was, push down really hard, and then just go and rip the apple in two, and then a big green tick comes up and goes ding.
But did it explain why?
No.
And also,
what's the fucking point in that?
You've only got two halves of an apple then?
Yes.
I'm going to keep going. Just rip it smaller and smaller and smaller.
Work twice.
No, I think you can only rip it a certain number of times, like holding a piece of paper. There's an upper limit to how many times you can rip an apple, and it's zero. It's 0 times.
But not only is that really hard to do, and I've watched videos of people trying to replicate this hack of they go, it just doesn't happen.
I love how your answer to does this work isn't to go and get an apple.
No, I know that's the thing. It's to watch other people.
Of course it is.
I remember the time, Mike, you once saw a meme going around of how much sugar was in different drinks, and you went out and bought all those drinks and then stuck them onto a board yourself and put the sugar in. This time you see a video of someone tearing an apple, and all you need to do is buy an apple, a 12p or less apple, and you go, no, I best watch another load of videos of people trying to tear apples.
Watch it on YouTube. Okay. Of course you do. But actually, cutting the apple in half with a knife is easier than tearing the apple, or indeed, not cutting the apple at all.
Don't cut the apple.
Just eat the apple.
If there's a reason you want to cut the apple like that, you want it cut into a certain shape and size for a reason.
Yeah.
Not just broken in half.
So I think the only thing that would be different there is you'd need to cut it in some way if you had dentures, because people classically, the classic thing with apples and dentures is like, oh, you can't even bite an apple. Look how good this denture paste stuff is. You can bite an apple now. So I can imagine if you did have issues with your teeth, then you would need to have the apple sort of cut, but still cut it.
I used to cut apples when before I started using sensitive toothpaste because the cold on my teeth was unbearable. So
how cold were your apples?
I keep my apples in the fridge. They keep them fresher longer.
Eat them. I don't think I've ever had I've never bought a bag of apples or a thing of apples and have an apple go off.
I have.
Okay.
I'm not a big fruit fan. I don't eat a lot of fruit.
So 2 data points. The truth must be exactly in the middle.
God, you have been on YouTube a while.
They suggest that earphones aren't meant to be used the way we use them. Rather, they should be placed in the ear upside down with a cable going upward, which then loops behind the ears and goes down.
That's going to be really uncomfortable.
Behind your ear instead.
That entirely depends on what size earphone you're talking about as well.
Now, obviously, that's not how earphones are designed. This is in a video they've got called like Stuff You're Doing Wrong. And it's like, you're not meant to do it like this, you're meant to do it like that. And that's just not true. That isn't how that works. But it's like for many designs of earphones, the phone is not rotationally symmetrical.
No.
Like the Apple earphones, for example, point in a specific direction. The ones that are kind of in-ear earphones that you have to like squish in and form a seal, they often have a direction on them.
Yeah.
So to make this work, you have to put the left bud in the right ear and the right bud in the left ear to actually make this work, which is fine if that's what you want to do.
Does that still
Why
work?
would you bother?
But yeah, why would you bother? Not only that, but on the video...
What if they're going to come up with a headphone hack? Can they come up with a headphone hack that means I don't? And I know what the hack is to this. That I don't catch my headphones on the door handle every time I lean down into the kitchen cupboard. Every single time.
I mean, it's wireless headphones, isn't it?
Headphones. I got me some of them.
I've got wireless headphones. I always lose wireless headphones. That's my problem. They're not attached to a cable.
You can attach them to a cable. You can get a little cable to attach your Apple ones together, which I bought a cable for like £1, thinking if I travel a lot, I don't want to be like getting off a train and one just fall out somehow because I've been knocked by something and then I've lost it. But then I haven't actually bothered using that cable. It turns out it wasn't that big a problem.
But on the video where they present the headphone hack, they show this before video of you doing it wrong. This is how you're doing it wrong. And then an after video of...
I love the idea that the before video of someone doing it wrong is someone wearing earphones
Just wearing
in a perfectly normal and comfortable way. Like, I don't know how to cope with my earphones as everybody else is using them and it's totally fine.
But in the before shot, the right bud is in the right ear, and in the after shot, the left bud is in the right ear, which you can see on the video, because earbuds come with a little L on them.
Yeah.
Because of course they do.
Which means that if anything's cut properly for stereo sound, then you're fucking that entirely up by having them the other way around. If you're wearing earphones and watching a film through earphones, and you're wearing the left and the right and the right and the left ear, and it's got any kind of surround sound stereo effects going on, you're going to be totally confused.
Yep.
The bullet's coming one way, you're looking the other way. Oh, it's a nightmare.
Madness. In another video, they suggest a method for making an emergency spoon. Their words.
Emergency spoon.
Emergency spoon.
I mean,
I have
it's hand, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it depends how much of an emergency it is. I mean, if it's that much of an emergency, just use your hand.
Yeah.
So they have somebody, they take a bottle of Coca-Cola and cut a spoon shape out of it and then show somebody eating soup.
So you've got access to a bottle of Coca-Cola and a pair of scissors.
Yep.
But not a spoon.
But not a spoon.
And to eat soup.
Yeah, you can
Drink
just
the
drink
soup.
the soup. You can just drink the soup.
Emma's writing that one down.
And the sharp edges of the spoon are going to catch on your lips and that kind of thing. And after it's just no.
Mike,
who needs a spoon that badly?
I remember, like, we've been doing this show for nearly 9 years now. Do you feel you've run out of things to debunk now that you're debunking life hacks about how to replace your emergency spoon use?
Oh, I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
I'm going somewhere with this.
It's not AIDS denialism, is it?
Then there's just plain bizarre things, as if those weren't bizarre enough. Like the claim that backpacks are actually meant to be worn on your front like a papoose.
Right.
Or that steaks can be cooked by wrapping them in foil and leaving them under a hot iron for 5 minutes on each side.
That's probably true, the latter, but it's...
I mean, it works. It's just... Who's got access to an iron and not a kitchen?
I think
Who needs to eat a steak?
I think it's if you're in a hotel.
And you want to eat a steak, you've got a raw steak, you're in your room, you've made yourself a knife out of like the inside of a Dr. Pepper can or something.
And if you don't have an iron, you can use a toaster. They wrap it in foil, pop a steak in the toaster.
What about a Colby trouser press?
At one point, right, they get a steak, they cut it into strips, stick it inside the arse of a chicken.
What?
Pour that full of hot broth, and then say, later, and the kind of clock animation goes...
Hot broth?
Hot broth, just says hot broth.
What the fuck are they making?
Hot broth, and it pulls out this lovely cooked steak strips that they have with the chicken leg. So, what are you... Cook a steak? What are you doing?
Was the chicken raw?
No, it was a cooked chicken.
So they put...
In a jar.
A steak...
It's like in a bucket.
They put steaks into a bucket of cooked chicken.
Yes.
Pour in some broth.
Hot broth.
Why broth?
Don't know.
Okay.
And then come back some arbitrary length of time later and the steak is cooked.
I've no idea what that's all about. What do they do with the rest of the chicken? Do they just throw it away?
Well, they only eat the chicken leg. That's all you see. I suppose the rest of it you used to make it.
So what you need for that? I mean, I realise we're probably going
tight or something.
We're probably going into detail more than we necessarily need to. But what that life hack is telling you there is, if you're trying to cook a chicken and to cook a steak, and you don't have access to anything that will cook a steak, all you need to have access to is a cooked chicken, a bucket, and some hot broth. So presumably some way of heating the broth up that would only apply to broth and not, say, a steak.
So this channel's been getting under my skin for a few weeks now. The hacks seem bizarre. It's a mix of kind of nonsensical and arguably useful stuff, maybe sometimes. Not only that, but the titles of their videos are pure clickbait. 18 weird tricks to blow your imagination. 17 hacks with toothpaste to make your life easier. 20 ways to get the lips of your dreams. And
presume that means for yourself rather than like the lips of your dreams are someone else's lips. What you do is you cut open a Coke can to make a rudimentary knife.
The thumbnails are even worse.
Yeah.
So the thumbnails on these videos, 30 mind-blowing sweet hacks, has got a stream of Skittles, as in like the fruit-flavoured sweet, not the stuff you hit over with a ball in a game of Skittle.
And by stream?
They are pouring out of the shower head.
That's a sweet hack.
That's a sweet hack. So the thumbnail's got a packet of Skittles, and then next to it, someone holding a shower head, and out of the shower is coming Skittles. Photoshopped, obviously.
Yeah.
Entirely clickbait. And you can see from the comments on these thumbnails, you can see viewers saying, "Where's that thing in the thumbnail? I watched the whole video and I didn't see that. Did I miss it? Can someone give me a timestamp?" There's people in the comments confused asking about this because the one in the thumbnail is the one they want to try.
What?
And it's not. What? It's not there.
Why do those people want to try to have Skittles come out of their shower?
I don't know.
That's going to screw up both their shower and their Skittles, which is all ends of this equation.
So this is entirely clickbait. I then came across a video from a YouTuber named Jarvis Johnson. Jarvis Johnson's a former Google employee who now is a YouTuber. He's got a comedy YouTube channel. He has a video titled 5-Minute Hacks is the Worst Channel on YouTube. Where
he's not watching enough YouTube.
Where he makes many of the same criticisms that I'd been finding watching 5-Minute Crafts for a while. He mentions the clickbait thumbnails, he mentions the clickbait video titles, he mentions the mixture of maybe useful content and outright nonsense. But Jarvis then goes on to attempt some of the hacks depicted in the video. He tries the Apple thing, which is, oh, you're the guy who... all right, okay, that's good, that's nice. He tries making a toasted cheese sandwich with an iron. Which is the same as the steak thing. You make a cheese sandwich, you wrap it in foil, you leave it under an iron, turn it over, leave it under an iron again. It works reasonably well, he says.
Does it toast the bread, though? The bread's going to be soft still, because there's nothing to crisp up the bread, because it's not exposed to air, is it?
No, it does. It crisps up quite nicely. It was all right. Okay. He said it was a moderately successful, if of dubious value. Because who needs to do that? You might be able to come up with some convoluted situation in which you need to make a toasted sandwich and all you have is an iron and some bako foil. And bread and, cheese and so on.
And a knife.
But realistically, come on, who the fuck needs to cook a sandwich like that?
With his emergency spoon.
But he tries it, it makes a serviceable sandwich. He also tries a hack where they claim you can clean permanent marker from clothing by covering it in hand sanitizer, baking soda and lemon juice, then scrubbing it with a toothbrush and then putting it in the normal wash. So in 5-Minute Hacks, they draw a little frowny face in permanent marker on a...
What colour's the permanent marker?
Black marker. They draw a little frowny face, hand sanitizer gel on it, baking soda, lemon juice, scrub it with a toothbrush, put it in a washing machine. They pull it out of the washing machine. Beautiful, can't see a thing. Jarvis tries it, doesn't make a fucking difference at all. It comes out exactly the same as it was.
Alcohol.
Oh, God, you've gone straight into Alice's sweet spot here.
No, alcohol does pull out permanent marker. We would, in my old lab, would make laminated sheets to write booking things on and use permanent marker on it so that you couldn't just wipe it off and switch your booking with somebody else's, and then use
put a little bit of isopropyl will probably
ethanol
take it
on
off.
It and take it off. But we would use red marker because red ink comes out easier than black, and then blue and green. Like, you'd never do it with black ink because black ink just doesn't come off.
Yeah.
There's another thing you do with permanent marker. If you want to get it off a flat surface, like you've got a whiteboard and you've used, or like an acetate sheet and you've used permanent marker on it, if you just colour over it in non-permanent marker and then just rub it off as normal,
Jarvis also points out the high level of repetition in 5-Minute Crafts videos. The same hacks and ideas come up again and again in various different videos. Sometimes a reshoot of the same idea, sometimes reusing the same footage from an earlier video. This is one of the things that enables 5-Minute Crafts to publish 4 10 to 20 minute videos every day on their channel. And between the clickbait titles and thumbnails, the massive amount of content they're producing, 5-Minute Crafts have managed in only 2 years online, they started in November 2016, in only 2 years online, they've managed to amass 40 million subscribers on YouTube with over 10 billion views on their channel. 10 billion views. Which on a rough back-of-the-envelope calculation will have netted them somewhere in the region of $75 million in ad revenue.
Yeah.
So I thought, who the fuck is 5-Minute Crafts?
Yes, good question.
And how on earth have they gone from like 0 to 10 billion views in 2 years and raking in this absurd level of advertising revenue? So 5-Minute Crafts is owned by a media group called The Soul Publishing, who claim to be one of the biggest media publishers in the world, publishing 1,500 videos every month across 40 different YouTube pages in 10 different languages. They own several other YouTube channels, including 5-Minute Crafts Men, which has 750,000 subscribers, 92 million views. 5-Minute Crafts Girly, which I think is an interesting distinction in language, where they talk about men and girls. Not men and women, not boys and girls, but men and girls. So they own 5-Minute Crafts Girly, which has 7.8 million subscribers, so an order of magnitude more than the men's channel, and 1 billion views on its own. So 10 billion views on the main 5-Minute Crafts channel, another billion views on 5-Minute Crafts Girly. Which again is an order of magnitude more than the men. And of course they've got 5-Minute Crafts Kids, 8.5 million subscribers, 1.5 billion views. Every channel producing multiple videos per day, all with similar content, reused content across all of their channels.
Yeah.
They also own a channel called Brightside. Brightside claims to be a stay positive and look on the bright side of life channel. So their videos include how to survive when you lose control of your car, 11 types of manipulators you will meet every day, and 6
It's one of the 5 crafts.
6 warning signs a stroke is coming. Looking on the bright side of life there. Brightside also has a long-running series of videos that exploit viewer concerns about their health and body image. So they have 7 simple exercises for perfect buttocks, 1.7 million views. 10 tricks from a former FBI agent to become 200% more attractive, 3 million views. This Japanese method will help you get rid of belly fat, 10 million views. And if their demographics are anything like the demographics on 5-Minute Crafts, the audience here is primarily women, likely to be younger women and children. Hard to know for sure, but things seem to be pointing in that direction. Jarvis Johnson points to a video that they published titled "This Math Trick Will Guess Your Age," which claims to calculate your age. It's one of those things, take the year you were born and add 6 and yada, 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 that's that sort of thing. And when you read the comments underneath that video, it's all kids. It's people going, this said that I was 9, but actually I'm 10. Or this said that I'm 14, but actually I'm 13. You said I was 7, actually I'm 10. It's all kids under this video. So in the case of at least that video, 6.2 million views, it's all kids.
Or all kids that are commenting.
Or all kids that are commenting, certainly. Like 5-Minute Crafts, Brightside uses clickbait titles to attract views, and their videos are also needlessly padded. So Brightside has a series of riddle videos, for example. They've got 7 mystery riddles only the smartest 5% can solve.
Oh, God, I fucking hate that format of title. It's so irritating. Like 95% of your Facebook friends will get this wrong. Will you? And it's impossible to get it wrong.
The riddles are also often nonsense. So it's either the kind of bollocks riddle, like a man is found dead in a field wearing a backpack. How did he get there? And the answer is his parachute failed to open. And it's like, there's not remotely enough information in that, he could have been a backpacker who was shot. We don't know. There's not remotely enough information to get to the correct answer.
He was shot for wearing his backpack on his back rather than his front, as it's meant to be. Because obviously with a backpack, it's what it's referring to is it is the front and you are the back.
You are the back of the backpack, yeah. So the stuff where there's just no way to figure out there isn't enough information. Or Jarvis Johnson talks about one purported riddle that Brightside published about a man who is blind. and his doctor offers him surgery to fix his sight. So he goes for the surgery, and the doctor performs the surgery, bandages his eyes, and tells him, don't take the bandages off until you get home. But on the way home, the man can't wait, and he takes his bandages off on the train and then immediately commits suicide by jumping off the train. Why did he do it? Anyone got a clue as to why he did it?
Because he read a message on the train that made him feel very sad.
The solution is that he took the bandages off while the train was in a tunnel, so it was dark, thought that he was still blind, and so killed himself.
By jumping out the train?
By jumping out the train while it was in the tunnel.
He jumped into the side of the tunnel?
Yeah.
He hit his head very hard on the tunnel wall.
So it's like, well, why...
Well, the train light's not working.
Yeah, so trains have got lights... Tunnels aren't pitch black. How did you get the door open?
Yeah,
Why did the doctor pack him off onto the train instead
when
of...
he can't see.
Well, let's wait and see if it worked. It's only going to take you a couple hours to get home. We'll just keep you here for a couple hours and see if it works. This is nonsense. Absolute gibberish. What, didn't he have anyone with him? He just had just been discharged from major surgery.
Just his dog.
Jarvis also points out that although this is completely vacuous content-wise, these riddle videos, completely vacuous content-wise, they have high production values. They're well produced, they've got good sound, good colour grading, etc., but they are absent of any content whatsoever. They're also, as I say, needlessly padded. So I pulled out one of their riddle videos. I just pulled a shorter one so I didn't have to watch it for long. So I found a 6-minute long video, a riddle video, which was like 3 riddles that are going to do this. And I went through and looked how much of the video was actual content. 1 minute of that video was actually asking riddles. About another minute was explaining the answers to the riddles. And everything else in a 6-minute video was filler. Including around 2 minutes, which was just countdown timers on screen giving you time to answer the riddle.
Brilliant.
Harmless enough in itself, perhaps, but what this actually does is extend the watch duration of the video. So YouTube's recommendation algorithms use metrics like watch duration, which is literally how many seconds of a video have been watched, to indicate how engaged viewers of that video are. On the reasoning that videos which are only watched for a few seconds and then closed are not very engaging, so probably not very good, whereas videos that are watched for several minutes, especially if that's a significant fraction of the total runtime, are more likely to be engaging and therefore more likely to be good videos. And that then feeds into their recommendation algorithms, which means that viewers are offered good videos to watch because YouTube thinks you're more likely to enjoy a good video. Padding the videos out like this helps improve the watch duration, which improves your engagement scores, which means YouTube is more likely to suggest your content to other people. 5-Minute Crafts uses tricks to improve their watch duration as well. They game that watch duration system as well with a completely different technique. I mentioned before they put hacks in thumbnails that don't actually appear in the video itself. So viewers sit through the whole video.
Of course, yeah.
Rather than skipping.
Yeah. They sit through the whole video waiting for the hack from the thumbnail, which is something ridiculous. Like, literally, this is one of their thumbnails. Is someone with a shattered iPhone screen and a pencil eraser, and they're rubbing the pencil eraser on the screen, and it's making the shattered glass repair itself. And so people sit through the whole video waiting for the hack from the thumbnail to appear, and it never does. But by that time, they've watched the whole video, nice long view duration, more recommendations, more views, more advertising revenue. All feeds back into the same system. So the sole publishing are very much the taboola or outbrain of YouTube.
Yeah, very much so.
This is clickbait content. It's designed for views and recommendations, ultimately driving ad revenue.
I checked the subscribers are legit as well. I was just checking while you were talking, and it's not like they've bought a load of subscribers. I think it's Social Blade is the site that analyzes it, and it's an A+ rating. So those are legit stats.
Tie that in with their
estimated monthly earnings, about 1.7 million.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Tie that up with a formidable Facebook presence as well.
Of course.
52 million likes on Facebook.
I think I have come across them on Facebook. They'll pop up in the feed, and I usually just scroll past them. But yeah, I think probably I have come across them.
Well, also what they do is all their YouTube videos, the aspect ratio of the video is square, because they have designed that for Facebook and Instagram, not for YouTube. YouTube will just pillar box it and it'll be fine. But they have designed that for the Instagram, Facebook audience. So they got 52 million likes on Facebook for 5-Minute Crafts, another 42 million for Brightside, another 23 million on Instagram. For a company which makes a serious amount of cash, this company now also has a serious amount of customer data. Never mind a Cambridge Analytica, they trick you into taking so you voluntarily liked this page and handed your data over to this company. And in times where we know that the Russian government, for example, has been manipulating and exploiting social media platforms to influence political events in the United States and Europe, Cambridge Analytica, as I say, etc., someone with this much data and this much money is perhaps a reason for concern. So who are the people behind the Soul Publishing? They are two blokes called Marat Mukhanatov and Pavel Radev, both Russian nationals with a background in social media. According to LinkedIn, Radev is based in Cyprus and Marat is based in Russia. Now, I may be straying too far into conspiracy theory here, as I am an expert in this, as we all know. So I may be completely unfairly maligning these gentlemen or seeing patterns in things that aren't there, but there are legitimate reasons to be concerned about a company owned by the citizens of a hostile foreign power with a history of human rights abuses, pulling in millions of dollars in ad revenue by exploiting the viewing habits of children on YouTube, while marshalling vast amounts of data on who these people are, what they like, who they know, and what their views are. In a best-case scenario here, we have a corporation gaming YouTube's engagement metrics to extract millions of dollars of ad revenue and laughing all the way to the bank. But in a worst-case scenario, this could be something that's far more sinister.
So, I know that my visits are usually quite depressing. Drunk episode aside.
That was the most depressing one.
That was quite depressing.
So we're looking forward to some nice chipper content after my
happy things now. Except no, I'm gonna talk about sex offenders again.
Okay.
Sorry.
For a change.
It's like my thing. So when I last came on, I talked about a particular case, and I went through the parole process, basically for beginners, for people who didn't have any idea what that process involved, because I thought there was a lot of misreporting of this case, and I'd thought at the time that it was sort of the press had been very much unfairly maligning the parole board in terms of that they were so a terrible person had hoodwinked the parole board into making a terrible decision, but quite a bit has happened in that case since then. So I've come to update you, because that was back in January, I think was on the last time I was on.
Okay.
And at this point, I need to insert a caveat. Whilst I have never personally represented John Warboys, who is the person we're going to talk about, the firm I work for did represent him at a judicial review, which happened after my last appearance.
Last time you were on the show, you were not involved with him at all. No, this was just you talking from a distance.
From experience, yeah. But since then, he was a client of my firm in relation to a judicial review, which we're going to talk about. But I was not his solicitor. My information is still exclusively based on publicly available information, and I have not discussed this case with the solicitor at my firm who did represent him.
Okay.
Should make that very clear.
Absolutely,
before we continue. And in a desperate attempt to keep it light and to keep the conspiracy theory theme running throughout the show, whilst I was preparing for this, I did find out that there's actually a conspiracy theory in relation to this case. So Mr. Warboys is suspected of committing a large number of sexual offences whilst he was employed as a taxi driver, a black Hackney taxi driver specifically. And I have seen conspiracy theories that all of the people who accuse him of assaulting them, are in the pay of Uber and Lyft.
What?
Really?
In an attempt to bring down the black taxi.
Jesus.
Because black Hackneys can be brought down by one single driver.
Yes, apparently.
And also because Uber and Lyft have absolutely no history of sexual assault tied to their brands in the slightest. Yeah. Well, certainly Uber, yeah.
So I'm sorry, that's probably about the happiest this is going to get.
Okay,
anyway,
that's the moment of levity.
Yeah. So you may have seen in the last week or so, it's been reported that Mr. Warboys is now not going to be released following a second review by the parole board, which led to headlines like John Warboys, black cad rapist must stay behind bars, victory for victims, and actually I'm not going to read the Daily Mail one because that will take the rest of the piece because it's stupidly long. Anyway, so it seems from those headlines that I was wrong in my initial assessment, that the parole board did actually make a mad decision the first time.
The tabloids are all entirely right.
What has happened
Emma,
here?
prison solicitor, was wrong.
How can they have made such a radically different decision less than 12 months apart? Like two radically different decisions less than 12 months apart. So the main thing that happened is that immediately following my last appearance, there were a number of judicial reviews brought by two of the victims, the Mayor of London, and newspaper groups who were challenging the decision.
There's an Oxford comma in there, isn't there?
Yes.
It's like they brought by two of the victims, the Mayor of London and a newspaper. You're not making a further allegation against the...
No, okay. Definitely not. And this was the first time that a judicial review has been brought about a parole board decision by someone other than the prisoner or the Secretary of State. It's the first time that's ever happened, so it's quite unusual. I wasn't anticipating that would happen. The Secretary of State himself, David Gauke, he took legal advice and didn't issue proceedings himself because he was told that he wouldn't have standing. Basically, he was told it wouldn't work, but these people did bring, the other people did bring a case. The challenge was brought on two broad grounds. The first one was that the decision was irrational, based on the fact that he was alleged to have potentially committed a lot more offences. And the second one is that the parole board rules at the time prohibited the parole board from publishing any information about their decision making. So that was the reason that the newspaper groups were involved, because they wanted to report the decision and they couldn't because they didn't have access to any of the information.
Yeah.
And
that seems like a weird grounds on which to try and challenge the decision as being irrational. It's like, it's irrational. We think this is an irrationally made decision, and the reason we think it's irrationally made is because you haven't told us how you made it. Yeah,
well, there was an initial stumbling block when the proceedings were issued, because no one involved actually knew what the decision was based on. So they had to come to an agreement that they could have the information, which then led them to allow them to flesh out their arguments about why it was irrational. So that JR judgment was published, and so we have access to a lot more information now than we did back in January about how the release decision was come to in the first place. So let's go through some of the things that I was wrong about, or at least I was less sure about last time in terms of how that decision was made. So back in January, I assumed that all of the professionals involved would have supported release. Given the high-profile nature of his case, the fact he was a Category A prisoner, it is unusual to be released from Category A, so I assumed that everyone would be supportive of his release. Turns out I was wrong about that. So the probation service and the prison service weren't recommending his release. They thought he should stay in prison.
Okay.
Now, that does surprise me that the release would still be recommended on that basis, but it doesn't surprise me that they didn't recommend his release, because they're generally very risk averse, especially in controversial cases. They would prefer the parole board to rubber stamp a release rather than them.
Yeah, which I think you said last time you were on, that it's a very risk averse system anyway.
Yeah.
Generally.
So if someone does something terrible and gets recalled, the probation service want to say, we didn't want him out.
Yeah.
So we also didn't know if the victims who had come forward in the press at the time, back in January, were victims of the offences he was convicted of. Now I know that one of them was and one of them wasn't, although both of them had successfully brought civil claims against him where he had settled to pay them some money but hadn't admitted liability.
Okay, yeah.
And apparently he had settled a number of those claims. I think it was about 11 during the period when he was appealing his conviction. But he didn't admit a liability, but he did make payouts. And he's only relatively recently accepted his guilt. For a very long time he had been appealing and denying all involvement. It was only, I think it was 2015, where they say he had an epiphany sort of thing and said, actually, I did do these things.
On anything? That's the only time he accepted guilt on absolutely any of these?
Yeah, on any of them, yeah. Before that he was making...
Not less like on some other ones, but yeah.
Other things, he did complete the sex offender treatment programme. Our old friend, the sex offender treatment programme.
The one that works so brilliantly that it makes people more likely to be a sex offender.
Yeah. As noted in the judicial review, the evidence shows that produces a 2% increased risk of reoffending. There were 4 psychologists involved in the case, which is a lot. 2 were independently instructed by Mr. Warboys. 2 were prison or Secretary of State sort of related or instructed. One of them had only assessed him on the paper, and I don't like to give any weight to paper-based psychology assessments if they've not spoken to him.
So they did an assessment without actually meeting.
Yeah, they just read the paperwork or reviewed all the other reports.
Is that common?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is common. It shouldn't be common.
Okay. Yeah.
They recommend the psychologists recommended a range of things, from staying in close conditions to release. So they were all divided about what the right thing to happen should be, and they had a concern about if he went to open conditions or anything else, that given how notorious he was, it would be too hard to manage him, and therefore release would actually be a better risk management strategy.
And
Okay.
by
I
too
see.
hard to manage, you mean because he was quite notorious that keeping, as much as anything, keeping him safe, keeping the environment
it would
around
be more
him.
about that rather than
Yeah, because people would like beat him up because he's notorious.
Yeah.
Mm.
We know that the parole board who made the decision had access to a dossier that was about 600 pages long originally, which is on the large side for a normal parole review. It's not unheard of, but it's on the large side in terms of paperwork. But it didn't have some of the things that I would have expected to see in there, including sentencing remarks, which is something that I mentioned last time. It's usually at the start of the dossier, and it's where the judge is telling your client what a terrible, awful danger to society they are and how it will be a very long time before anyone thinks that you're safe, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And in most of my cases, I feel it's quite unfair to put that right front and centre the first thing you read.
Yeah.
When sometimes it's decades later. But it can be helpful in setting out exactly on what basis the person was convicted in terms of what things they are specifically said to have done. But it wasn't in Mr. Warboy's dossier. There was some reference to the police investigation into his suspected widespread offending, but none of the paperwork from the investigation was in that dossier. They also had no paperwork in relation to the case against the Metropolitan Police that was brought by the victims that I mentioned, which is a case that they brought, which they were successful in, that said that the Metropolitan Police had breached Article 3 of their convention rights against torture, inhumane and degrading treatment in relation to how the investigation was completed. And since I was here in January, that case went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld the decision again. So that's where we're at with that. The original decision in that series of decisions from the original Court of Appeal Supreme Court had a lot of significant additional information that the parole board didn't have in relation to the extent of the investigation, in specific information about the circumstances of Mr. Warboy's arrest. And that judge in that case thought it likely that he was guilty of 105 rapes and sexual offences, which is significantly more than 19 offences he was convicted of between 2002 and 2008, and that he'd been found, for example, with what was described as a rape kit on arrest and things like that, which was significantly different information from the information that was in the dossier available to the parole board.
Yeah. Sorry, the judge suspected how many?
105.
105 in a 6-year period?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. So, the Judicial Review Court held that whilst the decision the parole board came to was not irrational based on what they had in front of them, it was in that they should have made more inquiries, which would have provided significant additional evidence that they could have used to test Mr. Warboy's account. Because what they said is, Mr. Warboy's had a very specific account of the 19 offences that he was convicted of. He said that, and he's only accepted guilt in relation to those offences, and he said that there was a very specific trigger to the start of his offending. And whereas the offending that he was suspected of in that Metropolitan Police case predates him when it started from his point of view by several years.
Right, okay.
So what they said is that if they'd had that information, they could have tested his account and to try and test sort of his openness and his honesty with regards to why he committed his offences. The court were clear that the parole board shouldn't be making the decision about whether or not someone committed offences for which they haven't been convicted, but they thought in this specific case they should have looked further, which is a bit of a fudge. It's a bit difficult because it's hard to say don't say that they did commit something they weren't convicted of, but also take it into account. It's hard, because in my experience since this decision, panels have become extremely concerned about obtaining police information and have started sometimes to accept as gospel what police records say for stuff that my clients weren't even charged with. And that's becoming very problematic in other cases of mine. Essentially people end up carrying the can for something that there may not have been particularly good evidence and it wasn't actually brought forward and they were never charged with. It's just what the police at one point said they might have done. Yes, which is causing me in other cases significant problems. And I feel like I need to defend the parole board here to a certain extent because it's the Secretary of State's responsibility, the Ministry of Justice's responsibility for putting that dossier together in the first place. And they didn't include any of this information, though they had access to it. They had a representative at the hearing who didn't bring any of this up. And they didn't bring the judicial review themselves against legal advice. However, David Galt, the Secretary of State, was quite quick to make the head of the parole board step down after this decision. And I would encourage people to read Nick Hardwick, the previous chair of the parole board's account of how that happened, because apparently the Secretary of State told him to don't make me get macho on you.
Don't make him get macho.
Don't make me get macho on you. Which is really distressing, because Nick Hardwick before this was championing the parole board being more transparent and stuff like that. He was the biggest advocate for that stuff. and then he was forced to step down by David Gork, who, in my view, had as equal a reason to step down as Nick Hardwick at that point, given the failings of the Secretary of State to put all of this stuff that he could have put in the dossier.
Yeah, well, politicians don't resign when they do something wrong.
No.
We never see that. Can't remember the last time a politician resigned.
Anyway, secondly, the judicial review held that the rule that meant the parole board couldn't publish things was unlawful, and that they should change their rules. So now you can have not whole decisions, but summaries of decisions if requested by the media, by victims, so they can have a better idea of the decision making, which is why we have the summary for the second review of this case. It's quite short. There's only 2 pages, and I've given you all a copy of it to have a quick look at.
By you all, you mean like the 3 of us here, not the listeners. If you look in your on your desk,
I'll send it to you if you want. It's publicly available on Twitter, etc. If you wanted to look at it. Now, a summary is the right description, because a parole decision is usually about 8, 9, 10 pages long. So this is quite a lot shorter than I imagine the actual decision is. I anticipate particularly Mr. Warboys' will be very long, given the history of the case. The second thing to note about this decision is that it is a paper decision. This means that second time round with this review, Mr. Warboys has not had an oral hearing. Parole reviews are split into 2 stages, a paper and an oral stage. The paper stage is as it sounds. The parole board consider a dossier and any representations from the prisoner and decide whether they have enough for release, in some cases, whether it's a definite no, there's no way you're getting out yet, or whether they want to have an oral hearing to get further evidence and make up their mind. And most cases where release is being sought go to a hearing. Technically, Mr. Warboys can appeal this decision, but you will note from that decision that it says that his representations say that he doesn't want an oral hearing, he's not seeking release.
Yeah.
What that says to me is he's probably accepted that it's not worth pursuing this one at this point. The facts have changed from back in November when November last year when the decision was last made. You can see that the dossier in the new review was 1,255 pages long. That is twice as long.
More than twice.
More than twice as long as it was last time. And we can likely guess what a lot of that additional information is or was from all the paperwork that wasn't in the last dossier. Given the absolute thrashing that the Metropolitan Police got in the Supreme Court for their case where they breached Article 3 for the victims, there is an active reinvestigation of a large number of those allegations, and the Metropolitan Police have passed a case file to the CPS to make a charging decision on some other ones.
So he may get charged.
For other offences. And the parole board, when I have cases where someone has outstanding charges and things like that, the parole board are loath to make a decision because they can't make an accurate risk assessment decision because they're supposed to wait until someone's got convicted, at least in theory, to make an assessment. And if he gets a further sentence, he'll obviously become ineligible for parole until the minimum term of that sentence is finished. And it would also change his risk profile, as if he's convicted of other offences that predate the ones he had before. That completely would invalidate his account that he's given previously of his offending, and that would need to be reassessed. So other things I've seen that people are a bit surprised about by this decision, if you look, there's a list given of risk factors. And I've seen people on social media stating sort of with some incredulity, how could the first panel ever have felt it was okay to release someone who has, quote, thinks rape is acceptable, end quote, as a risk factor? And I can see why you would think that was unreasonable.
It stood out when I read the risk assessment.
It does look ridiculous from someone who's unfamiliar with the process of risk assessment for parole. But a thing to remember is that risk factors generally relate to things that have caused offending, and we don't know, because this is a summary, exactly where that assertion as a risk factor has come from. It could be from any point. It could have come from him, but it's unlikely that I would say it's unlikely that he said.
That he said, "Oh, it's absolutely fine.
Rape is acceptable." It doesn't mean that he said that. It could come from anywhere, and risk factors are generally sort of come from all different sources of places, and it reads quite harshly in the summary decision, but it will, I imagine, have been fully explained.
In the full thing.
That we can't see. As to what happens next, we need to wait the outcome of the ongoing criminal issues. If they don't go any further, then he will have a further review in at least 2 years' time, because 2 years is the maximum amount of time between parole reviews for people who are eligible for them, despite the fact that David Gort, the Justice Secretary, has publicly said recently that he doesn't think he should ever be released, which I think is irresponsible of him, because he knows that he will be eligible for release at some point. So, arguably, this case has improved things for victims who are now able to get summaries, who are able to see on the way that decisions are based on. Although I've seen that some issues are still relevant, it's kind of an aftershock of this case. I'm having, unfortunately, some cases where victims in some of the hearings I have are becoming aware of hearings like the day before they happen, which is causing obvious, understandable, significant distress.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And then those hearings have to be adjourned because that person obviously has a right to have a proper, take proper part in the hearing, and that causes sort of delay and cost to everyone involved, including them, which is just not good.
Yeah.
And the panels that I see also are a lot more probing and about whether or not victims have been contacted. Before, they would just have accepted as written that the person had been contacted, but they will now double check how have they been contacted, how often have they been contacted, things like that, which is a good thing. There has been a slight decrease in release decisions and a massive increase in adjournments, at least in my own caseload since this decision, while they make sure they've got every single piece of paper that's ever been written about my clients, and to make sure that their decisions are watertight. I am concerned that this one particularly bad and exceptional case, and the High Court in the judicial review referred to it that way, is now impacting the more everyday type cases negatively. For example, I'm having sort of clients who've been recalled on minor breaches being kept in for coming up to years longer at this point than they would have previously, whilst extremely historic info about non-convicted behaviour prior to sentences obtained, which, in my view, is completely disproportionate in terms of risk management. There's also an ongoing judicial review about the Parole Board's independence, and a decision on that is awaited, because the Parole Board was created to make these decisions independent of government, because when they were in the hands of the Secretary of State, they were much more political.
Yeah, of course,
When is anyone going to get released if you're up for election based on your release decisions?
Yeah.
But the Secretary of State interfered greatly in this case, and has initiated a review of the Parole Board and suggesting things like every high-profile release decision should automatically get done twice to make sure it's not wrong and things like that. And
where's the money coming from for that?
Excellent question. I don't imagine that they would fund me to represent someone twice through the same review. Things like that.
Yeah.
And there was in my view, a highly political and unfair removal of the head of the Parole Board, sort of by fiat, without any sort of protocol. And again, I would encourage listeners to read Nick Hardwick's account, because it is quite extraordinary.
So he was certainly, according to the account, was he sacked rather than resigned, or was he sort of asked to resign?
He didn't. He officially resigned because he was told he had to by the Secretary of State, and he thought because of the Secretary of State's position, his position was untenable. But Nick Hardwick didn't think he had to go.
Yeah.
And I don't think he had to go. He was a brilliant chair of the Parole Board. At the end of the day, I would say that this decision is evidence of the Parole Board changing its mind when presented with new evidence. Which is, as skeptics, is something that I want to see.
Yeah.
I think they should be applauded and not chastised. It's especially a bit rich of the Secretary of State to comment about it, given their role in completing the paperwork and stuff on which the decision is based in the first place, and it was partly their deficits in providing that information that led to the first decision. And I would note, the same thing that I noted back in January, that despite cases like this, and this is an exceptional case, the serious reoffence rate for people who have been released by the Parole Board remains a tiny, tiny fraction of under 1%, and has done for a long time, which suggests they are in fact doing a very good job.
So, Liverpool Skeptics in the Pub, we've got a special event this evening. We've got the Merseyside Skeptics Christmas quiz, which is happening in the Casa on Hope Street.
It is. Is it a Christmas quiz or just a quiz?
Well, we tend to do them around Christmas time. We did it at Christmas time last year. We did it Christmas time this year. It's not a Christmas quiz per se.
Let's not get our listeners in the mindset of boning upon all their Christmas knowledge to walk in there. Because I don't think
we are going to be quizzing you on Christmas.
Specifically on Christmas. Specifically on the biblical account of Christmas across the four Gospels.
So that's in the Casa on Hope Street.
It is in the downstairs section.
We're in the downstairs thing. We're in the downstairs section at the Casa.
Upstairs, they've got a baby shower going on. Don't go to the upstairs room.
I mean, you can if you like. If you've got a present to give, then you can pop along. It's Christmas themed. You pop along with a present for the baby.
I don't think it's up to us to say that.
So if you're in the Liverpool area, you should come along to that. We also have got an announcement to make. As we intimated before, next year will be 10 years since we started this podcast. 10 years since we set up Merseyside Skeptics.
10 years since we set up the group, yeah.
And in recognition of that base 10-centric milestone, we will be holding a celebration event in Liverpool City Centre next July.
Yep.
The event is called MSS 10. It's going to be an all-day event taking place at the Liner Hotel in central Liverpool on the 6th of July 2019. There's going to be guest speakers drawn from some of our favourite speakers from over the last 10 years.
Some of our favourites from the last 10 years worth of talks.
So we've got some great speakers lined up for that already. And there's going to be music and magic and comedy and a party extending into the small hours of Saturday evening.
This sounds like an awful lot of work for someone who's taken the year.
It's a fraction of the work for QED.
It's only one day.
It's one day, one room. It's not a QED. It is not a QED. We are having the year off doing QEDs. It is not a QED.
So that's MSS 10. At the moment, this is just to save the date. July the 6th, 2019 at the Liner Hotel in Liverpool. Tickets will be going on sale early in the new year. And we'll keep you up to date on this show as to how you can get tickets if you're minded to do so. Aside from that, then, I think that was all we have time for.
Yeah, I think so.
All that remains then is for me to thank Marsh for coming on today.
Thanks very much. Hello.
Thank you to Alice.
Thank you.
And thanks very much to Emma.
You're welcome.
We've been Skeptics with a K, and we will see you next time.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Skeptics with a K is a production of the Merseyside Skeptics Society. For more information, visit our website www.merseysideskeptics.org.uk or email podcast@merseysideskeptics.org.uk.